Hi everyone, Kendall here, and welcome back for a bonus video this week, which is the Box Lantern Sew-Along hosted by Pat Sloan at her website, ilovetomakequilts.com. This sew-along uses a pattern named Evergreen by It's So Emma, and if you were lucky enough to get one of the kits while they were available, you can sew along with Pat's Paradise Park fabric, and the fabric placement for that will be within the kit and the pattern supplied. I didn't have my Paradise Park delivered on time for this, so I am once again using Pat's Sleepovers fabric, and I have done an alternate design for that, as you can see on the wall behind me here. I changed the way that the crosses were going and just played around with my fabric placement to suit what I had available here. But if you are following along with the kit, everything in this video will make sense as we just talk about the fabric letters, and everything is as per the pattern. All of the links are in the description box below to Pat's website and to purchase the pattern or the kit if they are still available. Anyway, without much further ado, let's go ahead and I'll show you how I do it. So we are going to start with the cross block, and for that we need fabrics A, B, C, E, F and G. Now on the table in front of me, I only have enough of the fabrics to make just the one block for this example, but the principle is the same across all blocks. You just need to pay attention to the fabrics that you're using for each of these cross blocks. If you're following along with Pat's Paradise Park, there is the image to help you out. I am using Sleepovers, as I said in the introduction, as my Paradise Park has not come into stock yet. We need to do a little bit of preparation before we can commence sewing, and in that spirit we need to take our A squares, as you can see me doing here, and cut those on the diagonal in both directions. With our A quarter square triangles now made, we need to take our C squares and cut those on the diagonal just once, creating half square triangles. As you would have seen there originally, I didn't have enough of the C squares to get the right amount of pieces for my one block, so I pulled some in from all my previously cut stuff. Now we are going to take our E square, and this too, like the A square, gets cut on the diagonal twice. We'll then pull in our F square, and that gets cut like the C square on the diagonal just once. Once we've done all this cutting, we will have all of our required quarter square and half square triangles ready to go ahead and create our blocks. Following along with the pattern, the first step is to make a pieced half square triangle unit which incorporates our G squares and our C half square triangles that we prepared earlier. We need to attach a half square triangle on either side of our G square, with our G square looking like a diamond, which I'll show you in just one moment. We can then attach the first piece, the one on the right hand side, and we do have a 90-degree angle on the top there to line up. Sorry, there is no sewing footage for this video. I am having trouble again with my second camera. You can see me over to the side there though, so you know that I am doing it. So we line up that 90-degree corner and sew these first half square triangles onto our G square with our 1/4 inch seam. With those sewn on, you can now trim that little dog ear off first, or as I'm doing here, pressing first. Later on I think I do trim them first, or when I was making the rest of them. And then we press this out towards that background fabric. Now for these, I am following the pressing directions that are in the pattern, and here you can see me now just trimming off that little dog ear, as it can get in the way when we go to attach our other half square triangle to the other side of this. Lay this back out as we wanted it to be, and we know now for that left hand one we can put the G square on the top, and we still have a 90-degree corner there to line that up against. After we've sewn on this half square triangle, we will also press this out towards that background fabric. The sizes given in the pattern for these are kind of exact, so you'll see that I may be a little bit wonky here when I go to cut this second little dog ear off. So before we attach our F half square triangles to these, I just want to make sure that I have an even seam, and I'm going to make sure that I am 1/4 inch away from that crossover. Because of the way that this is constructed, there is no real way to use any other measurements for this pieced half square triangle side, because you need everything to fall perfectly and have that point once we attach our F half square triangles. Refer back to the pattern and the fabric layout for which fabric goes to which of our pieced half square triangle units. So in my cases, for my two corners with the darker one, I'm going to have the match, and for my other paisley fabrics, which will make sense in their layout later, I'm having that light fabric from the cross. Now when we are sewing these F half square triangles on, I did make these slightly bigger than the measurement in the pattern, so I do have some wiggle room afterwards to trim these down. Not much. I increased it by 1/8 of an inch. So 1/8 in the big scheme of things is not much, but it can make a lot of difference. Now, I'm just pointing out there that when we take this to the machine, we want that pieced half square triangle on the top so that we can pay attention to where our needle is going, and we want that to just fall to the right hand side of where our previous stitching lines cross over. As per the pattern, we will press these to the more solid fabric, which is our F half square triangle. Now that we have that pieced, I'm just going to give these a quick trim because, as I said, I did make my F squares that 1/8 bigger, and you'll see that I don't trim off hardly anything. Now we need to locate the center of the block and make sure that everything is even on all sides before trimming these down. I'm not going to go into detail on how I did this, because if you follow the directions in the pattern verbatim, you won't be trimming anything at all off these. It's simply because I increased that 1/8 of an inch that I am just basically cutting the dog ears off and trimming one side of that F half square triangle. We now need to take the 1/4 square triangles that we created by cutting the two diagonals on our A and E fabrics and basically take these and make them into a half square triangle. So to do that, we'll just put our piles, as you can see me doing there, and I like to start from the top, making sure that I've got a solid piece of fabric to start from rather than the point. So making sure, referring back to the pattern for the correct fabric placement, lay that out as required, stitch this 1/4 inch seam, and we are going to press this towards the background fabric again, I believe, but let's see what happened. Yep, press all of these towards the background fabric as per the pattern. And just as before, we will take the remaining F half square triangles from before and make sure that we are attaching those to the correct pieces of fabric as per the fabric placement in whichever style of this quilt you are completing. We'll sew these with a 1/4 inch seam, and these get pressed towards that pieced half square triangle and away from the solid F triangle. And that is so later on when we sew all these together, we have nesting seams everywhere. Once again, because I cut my F squares that 1/8 of an inch larger than in the pattern, I do need to give these just a quick little haircut to make sure that I've got the required size to move forward in the pattern. With all of our required pieces now made, we'll bring in our B squares that we left aside from earlier and lay this out as per the pattern. I've got my little inset there in the top left-hand corner for the design that I came up with using the Sleepovers fabric. Once we've got all of these placed, we just put this together as a 9 patch, starting by sewing all of our vertical seams and then our horizontal seams. The pressing throughout, once again, I do it as per the pattern, and that means that the top and the bottom row get pressed out towards the corners. The middle row gets pressed in towards that solid center, and then we will have nesting seams wherever we go on every intersection because we've followed the pattern and the pressing directions work. You will notice throughout that I am actually just heating up the seam first before pressing this, and that's because I am pressing against a seam, and warming up that fabric first just makes it easier to fold that back and get a nice flat seam there. You may or may not have noticed through that fast forward footage that after I put the first horizontal seam on, attaching the top row to the middle, I chose to press this towards the center. So once again, warming up that seam first with the iron so that it's easier to fold this back against a bulky seam where our half square triangles and 1/4 square triangles are coming together at the sides there. Once you've got that fabric nice and warm, it does actually finger press over beautifully before finally setting that seam with the hot iron and maybe a couple of blasts of steam. I am loving my new Eliso Mini Pro iron. I just can't figure out why they thought a light on the front was necessary. Anyway, with that, our cross blocks are done. As the star block is quite simple, I am going to include this as a 2-for. That's 2 for 1. 2 blocks in the same video. For the star blocks, we just need our fabric B squares, our fabric H squares, and some fabric I squares. And with our fabric I squares, we need to put 2 sew and flips on one side of our B blocks, and we need 4 of those per star block. I am going to bring in my folded corner clipper tool as always with my sew and flips, and to do this we need to line up our smaller square in that corner, as you can see me doing there. Match our measurement on our folded corner clipper tool, in this instance that is 2 inches to the bottom. Make sure it's even on the top and the other side before trimming that fabric off, and then you take this to the machine and you stitch your 1/4 inch. We then press that out and repeat on the other side. I'm just going to quickly sew that there, and then I believe I show you something else. Let's see, what is he up to? We're grabbing our square, we're placing it in the corner, and we're grabbing our folded corner clipper tool. But this time I'm just using the diagonal on the tool and some of the other markings to make sure that I've got that 1/4 inch line going from corner to corner on our block. We don't always need to line this up perfectly, we just need to make sure that we have that 1/4 inch. I'm going to continue and get all of these done. We need to press that out towards the sew and flip that we've added, and then we need to add one on the buddy corner, the corner that's on the same side. We'll press those out, and then I'll come back and speak to you some more. So to reiterate what we just went through, we put the sew and flip on one corner, we then pressed all those out towards that sew and flip, we then got these ready and put another sew and flip on its buddy corner, or its neighbor, if you want to use that term. So we now have 2 sew and flips, and we also did this to 4 of our B squares for each star that we are making. So with all of those done, we just need to now lay this out in its 9 patch, the final fashion, by bringing in 4 more of our B squares and our H square for the center. As with all 9 patch construction, we're going to start by sewing our vertical seams and then our horizontal seams. You will notice that after I sew this first one on, to do this next row, I am using the outside of the square that we put the sew and flip on to make sure that we have this even, and I'm fudging any inaccuracy from that sew and flip inside the seam allowance. After I do this one, we'll have a better example on the next one, and you'll see here that I am lining up the bottom of the square there with the sew and flips on, with the bottom of the solid square we're attaching to it, and along the top you can see that that sew and flip isn't accurate, but I'm fudging it in the seam allowance and no one will ever know. Now that we do have all of our vertical seams sewn, I'll once again just remind you that we are pressing out towards the solid corner squares on the top and the bottom row, and in towards that center square on the middle row. Once we attach these rows together, we will again press in towards that center. And just like that, Bob is indeed your mother's brother. We have our star blocks done. So now that you know how to make the star block and the cross block, you make as many as are required for the pattern in your own fabric layouts. And these, there is no sashing, they simply sew together by butting up. Now, if you followed all of my pressing, the star blocks you'll be able to rotate a quarter and you'll have nesting seams for every single one of your intersections, putting this quilt top together. Thanks for joining me again this week, folks. Don't forget, if you liked what you saw today, make sure you click that little thumbs up button, share the video with a friend who might also be interested. Click that little subscribe button if you haven't already done so. Tickle the little bell to be notified of all my upcoming releases, normally only once a week, every now and again, twice a week. And stay tuned for an upcoming sew-along that I'll be hosting myself. That's it for now. I'll see you all again real soon. Bye for now.